I am on a quest to beat every game for the Nintendo Gamecube. Every single one. However, each game is chosen at random by this horrendous wheel, so we are never certain what's coming next. My name is Rami, and this is my quest to beat the entire GameCube library. Today we have the second game in our challenge, Scooby Doo Unmasked. Released globally in 2005 to mixed or average reviews, this game was developed by Artificial Mind and Movement and published by THQ. I wasn't super into Scooby Doo when I was growing up. I did see the movie when that released and know all the characters and the general premise, but this will be my first ever foray into a Scooby Doo video game. As such, I have no idea what sort of playstyle or mechanics we'll be dealing with. All I can assume is that we'll be solving some mysteries and eating a lot. Before we begin, just a quick reminder that the stream overlay is out of date for this one, but that will be corrected in video 3 onwards. I'd also like to shout out my friend Thab, who kindly shared my first video with his community and inspired this series with his beating every N64 game challenge. I've left a link to his channel in the description and highly recommend checking it out. As we load in, we get a groovy menu screen. My definition for beating this game is a nice and simple finish the story mode, so we hit new game and get stuck in. We start with a cutscene, and straight away, it's all of the iconic voice actors playing the main cast.
What does Jed do, Fred? He makes monsters. Monsters?
This was a nice surprise, as often with these IP tie-in games, it is bad impressions.
Remembered I've got something on the stove, and me and Scoob have to go back.
Relax, you.
It even has canned laughter, which was handy, so Twitch chat knew exactly when to laugh. We learn that the gang are visiting Fred's cousin Jed at the special effects movie studio Monstrous Fright and Magic, or MFM. But they immediately find him missing, therefore we get Fred's iconic voice line, and the gameplay begins.
Alright, Dave. Let's split up and see if we can find any clues.
As soon as we get in control, it's clear that we're playing a platform adventure game. We're also told that the main way Scooby attacks is by spinning. Sounds a bit like another game I've played. We're also told that Scooby snack trails typically guide the way, which is a cute way to use collectibles. After exploring for a bit, we find Velma. She asks for our help finding a clue to open a door.
Maybe there's a clue somewhere.
Maybe there's a clue. This thing? Okay. So this game clues just randomly float around in the sky. After that exhausting search, we learn that you need to use the correct clue for a given situation on Velma in order to progress. I honestly think this is a pretty decent tutorial so far. You want learning mechanics to feel organic, and for a game aimed at children, this gets the job done. Speaking of which, after sliding down a big pile of goo, Fred tells us that we can grab onto and climb cables in order to reach Daphne and Velma in the workshop. While we're exploring, there are 2 resources that I'm collecting, which the game has yet to explain. We have found a few different food items, including cheese and ice cream. We get a cute voice line from Scoob whenever we grab these.
Hot peppers. Phew.
But so far, no clue on what they do. The other is called Mubba. Again, no mention of this yet, but besides Scooby Snacks, it's the resource we find the most of. Once we catch up to the girls, it's time for our first dose of combat. Unfortunately, we need to fight Scooby's classic mortal enemy, rats. It's not much of a fight, but it does let us know that this game embodies the true essence of spin to win. After a bit more exploration, I found this monster suit on display. I noticed it wiggling around, and when you get close enough you can even hear some muffled crying for help. Sadly, the gang are less observant than I am, so we'll come back to this later. As I make my way through more platforming segments, I find some delicious, nutritious ingredients, chocolate and cabbage. We run into Shaggy, he learns that we have food, so you know what that means.
Jesse, we have to cook.
For some reason, despite being able to make whatever culinary nightmare I want, I chose the chocolate and ice cream combo. This results in an extra medal, which is our life bar in this game. So now we've been taught what food can be used for and why we want to collect all that we can. I'm honestly quite impressed with the tutorial for this game. They trickle feed you information about the mechanics and objectives in a pretty natural way, give you a chance to explore the environment, and let you interact with all the gang members complete with authentic voice actors. That all being said, the tutorial has reached its end, and it's time for some exposition about what we're doing and why. Scooby is about to get attacked by some skeleton knights, but gets saved by the CEO of MFM, Winslow Stanton, and his assistant, Marcy. Even Stanton has a solid voice actor.
Is that Adam West?
I call it Mubber,
Yeah, it is.
a remarkable soy-based formula that can take any shape. And it only breaks down under UV light. Isn't that right, Marcy?
So they certainly didn't skimp on the budget for this game. We're informed that Stanton believes Jed is a thief that stole Mubber and UV lamps, then reprogrammed the animatronics to attack people. And with that rather abrupt ending, we have completed the tutorial and first level. We can see in the level complete screen there is a game completion score based on how many clues, ingredients, and trap pieces you find. Since our challenge is to beat the game and not get 100% completion though, I won't be going out of my way to find every single one of these. Now then, let's head to Chinatown for our first real level. We're greeted by a cutscene introducing us to Maggie, the organizer of a Chinese New Year celebration, and she cryptically tells us the dragon is angry and you should leave. But we hear the dragon roar and she has mysteriously vanished. You could say that these cutscenes are reminiscent of the show, but I wouldn't call that a compliment. Characters just get introduced out of nowhere and things happen with little context or build-up. I know it's not Shakespeare or anything, but a little backstory or fleshing out these characters would be nice. Nonetheless, we're thrust into our second level of the game, and it's time to explore. Unlike MFM, which was a self-contained level, Chinatown is a hub world. This means we need to find clues dotted around, give them to Velma, and open up new areas. After running around a bit, we find a fortune cookie. After giving it to Velma, it apparently contains binary code, which somehow causes this truck to move. This makes total sense, of course, and since the game feels no need to elaborate, neither will I. Now that we have our first actual level revealed, it's time to see how the rest of the game will be playing out. I'd already mentioned how the platforming and spinning to attack reminded me of Crash Bandicoot earlier, but now that we have a hub world and some 2.5D platforming, it feels more like one than ever. This, however, is not a criticism. I'm a big fan of Crash games, and quite frankly, will take a formula I enjoy with a Scooby skin on it gladly. The level is pretty straightforward. We platform our way around using various environmental tools. We can bounce on tarps, slide down cables, and there are some magically moving platforms as well. We do occasionally encounter what I guess is a bad guy. He pops out a bunch of doors as we pass them, which is very Scooby Doo. No combat so far though. I did finally figure out what Mubber is for though.
So yeah, this mubby stuff, you have to use it to like make artificial snacks, which you can give to Shaggy to like cook meals, and then that's how you increase your like health pool, I guess. But then I haven't taken any damage so far. So do I need to increase my health pool?
After a bit more exploring and using some monkey bars, we reach a warp door. This takes us from our 2.5D environment into a now fully 3-dimensional back alley. And oh baby, it's time for some combat. I know what you're thinking, how is he so good at games? What can I say? We sure did spin. Despite the barren feeling due to lack of enemies, the environments in this game are actually really cool. The assets are diverse, there are creative platforming sections to engage with, and a lot of use of verticality. It's by no means a cheap cartoon tie-in game, it feels like a real video game with some passion and effort put into it. I'm critical of things like the lackluster characters and mediocre combat, because I think with a bit more polish, this game could have been something special and carved out a solid identity for what a Scooby Doo game could have looked like. As a perfect example of what I'm talking about, once we reached the end of this platforming segment, this happened.
I just have to run away? Oh. What? Okay. I literally, like, what? Like, I just walked off the screen and that guy just... Oh, there he is.
So, yeah. More non-characters and kind of clunky combat. We can only hope the combat improves moving forwards. Again though, as we progress, the platforming is great. I really enjoy this aspect of the game. In fact, at one point I even started talking about speedrunning the game for some fun sometime in the future. Although I did say the same thing about Top Angler, so maybe I just have terrible taste. We reach the end of the level and find another clue. This solidifies the game's loop in my mind. Unlock levels with clues, do levels and get more clues, rinse and repeat. Again, that classic, beloved character of Zen Tao appears, makes a threat, refuses to elaborate, and then dips. Velma finds an open manhole and assumes that that must be how Zen Tao is pretending to disappear.
Well, I killed Shaggy.
R.I.P. Shaggy. Once we get back to the hub, we can use our new clues to continue unlocking more levels by affecting the hub world environment. This gives us access to a new unlock, the Kung Fu Coin. Presumably a power-up system, but little elaboration so far. Now, one problem with Shaggy's untimely demise is we cannot cook food without him. So to avoid going hungry and to save our best boy, it was on to the next level.
Alright, let's go rescue Raggy from the Ruers. Build a Kung Fu costume. What the fuck is this?
I'll say it again, I'm kind of loving this game so far. It's some good dumb fun. We got our first taste of Kung Fu Scoob, and I quickly realized that there is a jump kick tech on the kit. It seems faster than running, and I assumed a speedrunner of the game likely spends most of the time spamming that. Therefore, anytime I was in the Kung Fu outfit moving forwards, I was likely using that move. One cute thing they did, when they don't want you to have the outfit for certain sections, they put UV lights in the way. We were told earlier that Mother melts under UV, and that's what our suit's made from. Little details like that go a long way for me. At this point, I've explained the majority of the mechanics and have been very detailed about the first 40 minutes of the game. In the interest of not making this video an hour long, I will be a little bit more concise moving forwards. This level was insanely huge. There was a good mix of platforming and some kung fu sections that spice up the movement and obstacles quite a bit. A little bit more combat too. Combat is still more or less spinning at the enemy or kung fuing them to death, but I appreciate there being more obstacles and levels feeling a little bit more alive. We reach the end of the elaborate section and channel our inner Goku. This leads into a totally unexpected section of the game. This is a very vintage platforming game staple, sections of the game that involve transportation and new mechanics. This was a short and sweet contrast to the huge amount of platforming and exploration we just did. It was at least difficult enough to require paying attention as well. Our reward for beating that section is reuniting with our bestest bud in the whole wide world. I cried. For some reason, in this game, Shaggy's still a coward, and yet Scooby is kind of badass. We need to navigate more platforming and combat in order to unlock this gate so Shaggy can escape. After some more exploration, finding a couple of clues, and some kung fu combat action, we found the switch we needed. We return to the hub world and learn that Daphne's now missing. We hear her crying for help from the temple. We use our 3 new clues on Velma and get some environmental changes. Now that our main man Shaggy is back, oh yes, today chef, I will be making a delicious cabbage, marshmallow and shrimp cocktail. We cook up some more abominations, and now our health pool is all the way up to 6. I also managed to climb the dragon statue, and in its newly open mouth, we get the golden Kung Fu coin. This apparently upgraded the Kung Fu suit to the ninja suit. We slide into the final level of Chinatown and get a new mechanic to deal with. There is these lanterns with rings below them. We need to grab onto these, line up our trajectory, and build momentum. Unfortunately, this mechanic felt pretty half-baked. I fell a lot. The swinging mechanic just felt clunky, and so far it's the only platforming aspect of the game I just straight up don't enjoy. However, once I finally managed to swing across, we went and found some gongs to hit. These make alterations to the level in the same style as the hub world, and open new puzzles and ways to progress. After much aggro battling with the swinging mechanic, we made our way to the next area. There we find our first ninja power-up. Really, I couldn't see too much of a difference from the Kung Fu suit, though it does have a very powerful ground pound style move. We get a cutscene showing Daphne trapped in a cage, and then it's time for an epic ninja battle. This section was actually kind of tough. I entered at low HP and got overwhelmed by numbers. This was officially the first death we had in the whole run. Once we loaded back in though, I gave it another go, and I took a slightly different approach. So, yeah. Turns out key blasting kinda busted. Once I mopped up those guys, I moseyed around and hit various gongs to make a new platform to climb and lower Daphne's cage down. I scaled the tower and I was able to rescue Daphne. Despite being a clue short and thinking I would need to replay the level, I decided to explore the hub world just to be sure. Luckily, for whatever reason, that clue was completely unnecessary and they let me into the final battle of Chinatown.
Looking for something? I don't believe you had the pleasure of meeting
Oh no, the dragon!
Use Kung Fu Mega Strikes to beat it.
The boss fight starts out by needing to farm enough mubba to activate the ninja suit. This is kind of a wild game, dude. I came in expecting some Weenie Hut Jr.'s adventure, and here we are fighting a dragon as a ninja. At this point, the boss fight became insanely trivial though. We just need to charge up the key blast and wait for the dragon to come towards us. Then we just zap it and knock off a section at a time. There are, however, a lot of sections, so this was a bit of a slog. After a few minutes of blasting though, we did manage to land the final key blast, and with that the dragon was defeated.
Mystery solved. And he would have gotten away with it.
Now let's see who Zen Tuo really is.
It's Maggie Z.
We get a cutscene revealing Maggie as the villain. Just as I was about to go on a rant about how dumb it is to introduce one character we know nothing about at the start of Chinatown and make her the villain, something surprising happened.
Exactly, meddling Raimi.
Nice try, Mystery.
Like she's not real, she's Mubber.
Oh.
what you can't hold.
Alright, that's actually a pretty good twist.
You know what you're all thinking,
As far as Scooby Doo goes, that's a pretty good twist.
and that wasn't him.
They got me, I'm not gonna lie. That went from absolute trash tier storytelling to pretty amusing with just one twist. After that pretty abrupt ending though, we're on to our next hub world, Rockin' Roller Coaster Terror. They do at least explain why we came to a theme park for the next level. The radio signal from the previous cutscene was traced to here. Apparently the theme park was started by Daphne's favourite musician, the Guitar Ghoul. We are again introduced to a new character out of nowhere.
He appears and disappears where and when he wants to.
And who are you?
Alvin Wiener, the Guitar Ghoul's biggest fan.
So at this point, I had my assumptions about who the villain was going to be, but we need to solve this mystery to find out. We now have our next hub world to explore. Aesthetically, I definitely like Chinatown much more. These environments felt a little bit washed out. After poking around a little bit though, I found a haunted house ticket which gave access to the first level of this world. A haunted house is some quintessential Scooby Doo stuff. A more enclosed environment might make for some different platforming from Chinatown as well. This level was predominantly rail-based. We needed to ride on the various carts that roamed through the map and occasionally hang on the underside of the tracks as well. There was also an annoying amount of the still janky swinging mechanic. I had a number of frustrating falls that resulted in needing to retrace my steps. It was pretty annoying. At about the halfway point, we slid along a cable and made our way onto the roof of the ride. This was a nice change of pace. The level was very long and tedious, so a return to the platforming on stationary objects was a big relief. We eventually spot a clue, but before we can reach it, we get our first encounter with the guitar ghoul. He just makes the stairs we were standing on turn into a ramp. The first time he did this, he got me. But once I spawned back in and I had some time to line up my jumps, it was a quick case of nabbing a couple more clues and bringing this level to an end. Once we return to the theme park, Velma has somehow traced the signal controlling the animatronics to a water park. Just like the classic cartoon, Shaggy and Scooby are immediately volunteered against their will to go check it out. We do the usual thing and give the clues we found to Velma. This causes changes in the hub world, which provide access to the next level. I did come across a costume machine on my way, which apparently gives us the bat suit, but we will need to find a silver coin to activate it just like we did with the Kung Fu and the ninja suits. After a bit of exploration though, and some of my much beloved swinging, I did manage to locate the bat coin, and so it was time to check out our next mechanic.
Sure.
Not quite what I was expecting, but it looks like a decent amount of effort went into the design. The Batsuit now lets us ride air currents to reach new locations. I'm a big fan of verticality in platformers, so I was immediately sold on this idea. With our new power, we were able to reach the entrance to the water park and crack on with our next clue hunt.
Like Scoob, wait for me.
I mean, Adam West is in this game.
Isn't that this guitar ghoul guy? Let's have a look. One thing's for sure, this guy rocks. Get it? He rocks.
I get it.
After witnessing the peak of comedy, it was time to explore the park. This level had two main features, going down water slides and needing to collect the items on them, then bouncing up some magically floating drums to reach the next one. After navigating that loop several times, I found that classic combo of cheese and keys. It was then back to slides and drums, and this part was very repetitive. Throughout the game, it felt like there were some areas that had a lot of thought and care put into them, some really tight platforming segments and some sections that completely changed the playstyle, but others seemed downright lazy. It's like they were nearly at the deadline and they were just kind of done with level design, so they just had Greg the intern copy-paste a bunch and cobble something together. I think it's a shame, because as I mentioned earlier, there is plenty to like about this game, and I think with a bit more polish would have elevated this from okay to memorable and worth recommending. I also haven't spent a ton of time on the combat. That's because it's easily the weakest aspect of the experience. Every level, a new unique monster is introduced, they're themed around the world and have some pretty diverse designs, but combat is essentially 90% spinning until things die, then finding a ninja suit power-up and key blasting everything off the face of the earth. We end up inside the machinery that powers the water park, and this is the sort of section I really enjoy. Solid traditional platforming, exploring to find the clues dotted around, and creative environmental hazards and obstacles. Upon reaching the end of this section, I got my first in-level Batsuit power-up. Regrettably though, we don't do any fancy jumps or obstacles with it, we just sort of lazily drift upwards. We then get another cutscene with the guitar ghoul. This time he activates a different kind of trap. We get sent down one final water slide, and this one is far bigger than all the others. There are hazards to avoid and items to collect. This was actually a really great section, and I wish the other slides had been more like this one. Our next cutscene inexplicably introduces Nikki Starlight. She's apparently the guitar ghoul's girlfriend, and she says that the one that we're fighting has to be a fake because he would never do something like this. So at this point we have two characters introduced for this world. I guess on the plus side, that's twice as many as Chinatown. They're keeping us on our toes for this mystery. We hear Daphne scream again, and apparently it sounds like she's in the circus area. I love how all these things just kind of happen, and new characters and locations are just brought up out of nowhere. So we get back in control, use our latest clues to alter the hub world, and it's on to the last level of Roller Coaster Terror. This level was long, debatably one of the 2 longest levels in the entire game. Aesthetically though, it's pretty cool. It's a mishmash of circus-themed apparatus that we need to investigate. There's trapezes, murderous clowns, cages of animals, slides, trampolines.
Oh my god!
What is it?
Trampoline! Trampoline!
You said what now?
And my favourite thing of the circus, deadly electrified water. Despite being perhaps overly long, I would say hands down this is the best stage in the game. Creative use of the theme, well-designed obstacles, and they were pretty sparing on the iffy combat, and they focused much more on the stronger platforming elements. We even see the return of the Batsuit, and this time it's actually kinda cool. It did kinda look like something out of Squid Game though. When are we gonna get a Squid Game game? A Squid Game? Anyway, this was a much better use of the Batsuit, and I was rewarded for all of my efforts with the most glorious of loot. There was one more lengthy segment as Vanilla Scooby to get through. This one had us bouncing across clown balloons that blow up after you touch them, so you need to make certain chains of them in one try, which is pretty neat. Several minutes later, we yoinked the final clue that we needed, and we were able to reach Daphne once more. I really hope she doesn't get captured again in the next world. The whole damsel in distress thing is pretty tired these days. After plugging in our final few clues, the Guitar Ghoul calls us out and demands a final showdown, so it's time to take this goober out. The fight consists of spin-attacking spiders that are randomly hanging about, into the Guitar Ghoul's shield. You need to break down enough of it to get a clean shot and then launch them through to damage him. As the fight progresses, the shield gains more and more layers, which makes it harder to hit him. Hang on, this looks a bit familiar. I think I've been pretty sparing with my Crash Bandicoot comparisons during this video, but this one feels a little bit on the nose. Well, I guess at least we're the ones attacking in this case. This fight was legitimately tough though. I did die a couple of times from his seemingly homing electric attacks, and if you die it's all the way back to the start. Thankfully I had been diligently collecting foodstuffs throughout the levels, and my health was bulky enough to tank the hits the second time around. After several attempts, I finally managed to biff the ghoul with one last spider.
Wiener? You can't prove anything. Besides, I'm the victim here.
So, surprising nobody, the first character we met when reaching the theme park is also our villain. Apparently he was jealous of the real Guitar Ghoul because they were successful and his band wasn't. He says that somebody gave him the mubba and instructed him to carry out his revenge. We also get the twist that Nikki is the real Guitar Ghoul. Apparently that's her stage persona, which helps keep her personal life separate. So really, they introduced her just to be a red herring for this mystery. Not really sure if red herrings work though if you only introduce 2 characters in the entire chapter. Well, whatever. I've come to expect as much from this game's narrative now. With that mystery solved, we're on to our final hub world, Harem Scarum at the Museum. We never see Nikki say this in the cutscene, but apparently she told the gang that MFM made all the interactive exhibits that are at the museum we're now going to be exploring. After looking around a bit and tracking down a couple of clues, I find an employee that mentions the robotic exhibits are going haywire and the rest of the staff have been scared away. We also find a Professor Stoker who mentions a caveman having been seen throughout the museum, but states that he doesn't believe in the rumors. This is where the story just totally went off the rails, and I'm not kidding. This is all of the context I had between now and the boss for this world. I know I've complained about the story and some of the game feeling rushed before, but here I swear Greg must have just dropped a few pages of the plot. This video has become a lot longer than I intended, and this world is easily the worst, so I'm just going to be as sparing as possible on the details. Again, you have as much context for this mystery as I did, which is virtually nothing. We dive into the first of the 3 levels, and it's prehistoric themed. The environments are pretty neat for this one. There's some dinosaur exhibits and display cases making up the bulk of the platforms that we need to navigate. We are introduced to a new enemy type, pterodactyls. They even get their own little intro cutscene, so they have to be tough, right? Spin OP, dude. What can I say? Gotta say though, this museum must be an OSHA violation. Not sure that I would want my patrons jumping across bottomless chasms and sliding down ice. After some more exploration and nabbing a couple of clues, we scale the outside of a fake volcano. On our way up, we find Shaggy, and he starts talking about how the volcanoes remind him of barbecue. This results in him producing a drumstick just out of the ether. That then causes a passing pterodactyl to latch on and carry Shaggy into the sky. In typical fashion, Scooby's just as worried about the drumstick as he is his best friend, and Shaggy would rather risk his life than let go of his snack. The story might have gone off a cliff here, but at least they understand the characters. In order to go rescue Shaggy again, we need to farm up some mubba and make another bat suit. We then use the glide power to traverse across some hot air vents, and we make our way into this extremely well textured ice cavern entrance. Now we have a new mechanic to handle. We are flying towards the camera while being chased by radioactive pterodactyls, a classic Scooby Doo scenario. This section was extremely short. You just kind of dodge the breath attacks, and occasionally the game shows you some arrows on the screen to let you know when an obstacle is coming up. I really loathe when games make you run away from danger towards the camera. It just feels cheap. I do, however, know there are plenty of games coming up on this challenge that employ the system, so we better get used to it. We catch up to Shaggy and save him. Unbelievably though, we don't even get the drumstick for our troubles. This game sucks. Oh well. With that, we have another level down and a bunch more clues to use in the hub world. Once we've used our clues to open up new paths, I made my way to the very top of the museum, where you can jump across this model of the solar system. By doing so, I found the final power-up coin. This gives us access to the Robin Hood costume. We head back down to the atrium and we find a costume machine that gives us the Robin Hood outfit, and in quintessential cartoon fashion, rather than shooting arrows, we're shooting plungers. This lets us tackle one last kind of obstacle, targets. The first use of this mechanic though did not fill me with confidence.
I literally shoot that just so I can go into the next stage.
Apparently the entire reason we entered this level is because the fireplace smells like barbecue, so Shaggy and Scooby split up to find food. This is probably the least novel stage in the entire game. It's essentially a medieval reskin of the very first level we did in Chinatown. It has the same 2.5D platforming action and similar obstacles like bouncy tarps and magical moving platforms. Very straightforward here. I just made my way through the path, nabbed a couple of clues, and this level was done. In a shocking twist now, not just Daphne, but also Fred has been captured. Progress, I guess? We just see the caveman on camera showing that he has them in a cage, and Velma says that he must be in the undersea exhibit. See what I mean about phoning it in? This whole section just doesn't flow properly. Now more than ever, things just kind of happen. Regardless, our journey is nearly at an end, so let's just press on. The final level's pretty cool. It's underwater themed and it's predominantly based around the use of the Robin Hood outfit. There's a bunch of targets dotted around. You need to line up your plungers and hit them in order to activate new platforms to progress. Even though we have a ranged attack, the spin is still just the peak of attacking technology, and if it ain't broke, don't fix it. After hitting all of the targets and reaching the end of the section, we get yet another nonsensical development. That's right, I'm a plane now. No idea why I'm a plane, but I am. This is as simple as follow the trail of Scooby snacks, aim the reticle at the blimps in the way, and blast them out of the sky tunnel thing. After reaching the end of that little segment, it's back to being Robin Hood Scoob for one last small platforming segment. This time we're riding on a platform and we need to hit these targets inside this Kraken-like exhibit. This was decently tricky as the timing on this platform and the targets being exposed does not match up. After a few attempts though, all the targets were hit and we were able to save Daphne and Fred.
Well, there's still the problem of us being trapped in a cage.
No problem, Fred.
Good job, Scooby.
Oh yeah, sure.
That is the end of the last full level of the game. At this point it's a final gauntlet until the end, so we're nearly there.
Nice. Nice.
Now that we have all the clues and the way to the boss is open, we just need to enter the door. Unfortunately, that requires getting across that model of the solar system again, and for whatever reason, there was just one jump that I could not make. It took me way too many attempts at this point. I was ready to finish the game. I was done, dude. I did eventually manage the seemingly impossible jump though, and it was time for the fight. Alright, you know how I've been complaining that nothing makes sense? The boss of this level is the icing on the cake. We enter the boss door, and this is what happens.
Oh wait, an alien? The fuck?
It's a UFO.
What?
Yup. Out of nowhere, I'm in a UFO fighting a UFO. What? What? The boss fight's pretty bizarre too. We are essentially playing bumper UFOs. We need to knock the other UFO into the electric barrier without touching it ourselves. This was actually unironically hard to do, as our UFO handles like a shopping cart with butter on the wheels. Eventually though, I realized that if I just sat still in the middle, I could just kind of wait until he heads towards me and get some free damage. Near the end of the fight, it's shown that there's the caveman inside the UFO, and he even has a gun now. He immediately blasts me, and we have to do the whole fight again. Fortunately, with my insane strats of hardly moving, the second attempt was a cakewalk.
Oh, that was close.
It's time for you to evolve.
The security guard.
You kids can't prove anything.
We didn't even meet the security guard, dude.
Dude, what? What do you mean? The villain was a character we've never even heard of? What happened here? This entire section of the game was a fever dream. It really feels like they cooked this bit up at the last second just to make the game a little bit longer. Whatever, dude. The gang decides that since the suit is made from mubba, just like the last two bosses, MFM has to be behind it, and Stanton has been sending them on a wild goose chase the whole game. So with suspicion now being on Stanton, the gang return to MFM in order to track him down. This section is extremely short. It's just the same environment we explored during the tutorial. However, this time the ninja suit machine has been active and there's an onslaught of enemies from the various worlds we traveled to get through. As always with the ninja suit, it's literally just spam key blasts, easy peasy. We return to the room containing that shaking mubba suit from right at the start of the game, and this time the gang finally notices it moving. Before we can check the suit though, we have a few more monsters to battle. I noticed the gang were just standing idly by and watching me do all the hard work. This would have been a really good opportunity for the other characters to pitch in, rather than just making their poor dog carry them all the time. After a cheeky death though, and a bit more spinning action, we finally get to check out that costume.
Jed.
In a shocking twist, it is revealed that Jed has been framed by Stanton and being held captive in the suit since before the game began. We hear my boy Adam West on the speaker system, still blaming Jed and threatening the gang. Somehow Jed knows exactly where he is just from hearing his voice, so now it's time to confront Mr. Stanton and put an end to this.
Well, did you really think you'd get away with this?
After the gang finally catches up with Stanton, he initiates our final boss fight. We are fighting our largest animatronic yet, a massive pterodactyl that seems to be a little bit radioactive just like all the others. We're told that we'll need the Robin Hood outfit and to shoot the target in the mouth. I couldn't really find a consistent pattern on when the target would appear, but after some nimble dodging and a few shots, we managed to beat the game.
Maybe salmon. It's not exactly that many shots to do anyway though, so it's fine. Oh.
Or not quite. It wouldn't be a classic final boss if there weren't multiple phases after all. Scooby now switches into the Batsuit, and it now becomes a mission to evade obstacles and all of the boss's attacks. This is just like that section earlier where we had the Batsuit and we were dodging the mini pterodactyls, but this time it's actually kind of challenging. One discovery that I did make is that if you crash into any obstacle, you get forced to repeat the entire section again. I didn't know this because the last section of this was just so easy. This segment was pretty long. Once again, there's arrows on the screen informing you where the next obstacle is going to be, but they are super abundant this time, and it's pretty tight navigating through some of them. This was more interesting and fun than the last time we did this with a Batsuit, but this definitely overstayed its welcome. Eventually though, I managed to reach the end of the obstacles and we enter the final phase as Ninja Scooby. This section felt kinda clunky too. Rather than pecking at you directly, the boss hits the floor repeatedly and you need to jump to avoid the tremors. The game does not do a good job of conveying this, and we took quite a bruising initially. Add to that the return of my mortal enemy, rats, and some radioactive breath attacks, and I got extremely close to defeat here. About a few dozen key blasts later, and it was finally over. For real this time.
Yeah!
Going somewhere. The jig is up, Mr. Stanton.
Too glass.
Like there are two of you.
Scooby?
Mother.
Well, you weren't here for the whole thing, Pablo, to be fair.
It's Marcy.
Indeed, Fred. It seems Marcy was trying to frame Stanton, not Jed.
Marcy. But why?
Because I helped create Mubber, but you took all the credit for it. I thought that if I gave you a bad name, I could start up my own.
Oh, I thought it was gonna crash there, like right at the end. I was about to get mad. I'm in a safe state.
You should have talked to me about it. Destroying the reputation of monstrous fright and magic would destroy Mubber. I'm sorry if I hurt you, Marcy. I'd like you to become a partner in the company.
And everyone lives happily ever after.
Yeah, I think I can do that.
And there we have it, a pretty classic Scooby-Doo mystery with a red herring and the real villain revealed at the last second. I will say, however, it was a surprisingly mature resolution with a character actually apologizing and an agreement being made. While the story as a whole was bare bones and nothing special, this was a much stronger ending than I would have gotten away with it if it weren't for you meddling kids. And that was Scooby Doo Unmasked, a surprisingly solid platforming game that seems pretty heavily inspired by Crash Bandicoot. It took a total of 4 hours and 50 minutes to beat. I ended up rating the game a 4 out of 10 for difficulty. It had a few frustrating bosses and enemies, but was otherwise very chill. In terms of fun, I decided on a 6 out of 10. It was much more enjoyable than I expected going in, and I found most of the platforming to be really solid. But some janky mechanics, lackluster story, and a couple of poorly executed boss fights definitely held it back from greatness. Unlike Top Angler though, I would give this game a tentative recommendation. If you made it this far, thank you so much for checking out my adventures with Scoob and the gang. Let's have a sneak peek at the next game on the list.
The most exciting moment. Our next game is... Casper Spirit Dimensions. Jesus, dude, what are these games?
There we have it, Casper Spirit Dimensions. I just cannot get a break with these games, can I? Funnily enough, this looks to be everything that I feared Scooby-Doo would be, a cheap cash-in on an IP and extremely low budget and effort. We watched the trailer on stream for fun, and it did not fill me with confidence. But we'll only know for sure once we give it a go. Thank you as always for watching, please consider liking and subscribing as they help the channel grow, and I look forward to seeing you on the next one. Bye bye.